Today, Glacier National Park. I'm going to show you some of its sights and sounds and share a few tips from the road, both for landscape and wildlife. Well, hey everyone, it's Hudson. Really fun stuff today. One of my favorite places on earth to photograph. The combination of wildlife and landscape in Glacier National Park is just amazing. I'm going to jump in and show you some video and stills from the trip that we just had. I had an amazing workshop with Rick LePage and David Archer and a whole group of amazing participants with great lake, great wildlife. So I'll share some of the stuff that we learned along the way. I was along with some talk about Nikon Z9's new Autocapture capability in firmware 4.0, which I'll be doing another video on soon. And we'll talk about a little bear incident that we had that was kind of fun. I'll give you a little hint to that, which is also going to be another upcoming video from the road in Glacier. We had a lot of fun. Let's just say everyone got out unscathed and we got some great pictures to boot. So I'll be sharing some of that. Quick announcement before I do. Office hours is this Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Big free group photography get together. You can sign up and leave a question at hudsonhenry.com/office hours or just click here. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. Also, we have on the website our Mazatlan Total Eclipse Workshop, which is going to be this next April 2024 for the total eclipse. I think it's going to be about the best place on the planet to be for that eclipse. You can hit the link right here and find out why. But that is up and you can sign up if you want. That will sell out fast. So you can jump over there and drop a deposit if you're interested or hit me up for any more information on that. All right, let's talk Glacier. Let's look at some of the sights and sounds. All right, well, I'm here in Adobe Lightroom Classic, and I've got just some fun images. I'll mix in a bit of video just to show you sort of the sights and sounds, some of the reasons why I feel like Glacier National Park is just one of the wildest feeling parks in the country. You know, it has more of an Alaska big park feel. You know, when we first got there, we stayed in West Glacier, had a really nice cabin that we could all get together and do some image reviews and just kind of get together. We had people staying at several places nearby. And, you know, one of the main goals there was just to kind of get to know each other, look at some images, and also photograph Lake McDonald. And we planned, you know, we had kind of clear skies. We planned to photograph it at dawn on really the second day of the workshop. So we went out the first day and did some scouting. And you can see my settings right here, which camera I was working with. So you can see whether it was a Q2 or the Z9. I pretty much worked with those two cameras, a little bit with the Z6 II as well. But I really love going out with the Q2 on my hip, kind of midday scouting. And sometimes I come up with black and white images that I really enjoy. So we were scouting there and I came upon these rocks, and there was actually a family playing right around these rocks, and they hadn't been here the last time exposed like this when I was photographing the lake. Lake level might have changed, but I really love the big kind of, you know, glacial features. You can feel that carving of, you know, just this big wild place on these stones with all the little stones that Lake McDonald's famous for, you know, looking into the big peaks of Glacier toward Logan Pass and the Highway to the Sun. And so, you know, looking at this, knowing that the sun would rise behind these peaks the next morning, I kind of got everybody out, had a look at that. I shot this with my Z9 and my 24-to-120 and realized, yeah, the 24-to-120 will work perfect for this. I kind of leaned in front of the family and just took a shot handheld. I wasn't even worried about composition as much as just sort of feeling the wide angle scene out. And then we also looked around and we found some other things. We found this beautiful small log that we could put in the shallows, and we kind of tucked it by a tree where we were going to photograph the next morning. And we took off and took a drive up the classic Going to the Sun highway. Again, middle of the day. I like shooting a little bit in black and white, keeping the sky out of it. We didn't have that interesting a sky. And we stopped along the river on the way up, and the river's just beautiful. It flows through these cataracts and has these drops and falls. Again, I was just shooting with the Q2. I actually have my big tall fluid head out with the little Q2 on it and its L bracket, and it's just so fun. I like my big tripod little camera series, and here's Charlie Mosier photographing down the river. And you know, one of my techniques on these kind of more bland sky days is keep the sky out of it. You know, and you know, you have so much contrast capability of capturing these days with our modern digital sensors that even on a brightly lit day like this, you can pull the shadow details out as long as you don't overexpose the highlights and blow them out. And keeping the sky out of the image for the most part is a good way to do that. Here's Bruce downriver. I got a little bit of that bland sky in there, but it's really just a portrait of Bruce working along the water here. And we just had a fantastic time, all of us out there. Just a really nice little kind of warm up, doing some longer exposures. And then that evening, this little white-tailed deer came walking through right near the cabin where Rick and I were staying with. And then the next morning, we got up, we deployed some of our props. You know, I waited out, put this log in the shallows, and you can see I'm working at ISO 500. That's that point. I talk a lot about this in my Milky Way photography course, but that's that point in the Nikon Z9 where the second ISO band kicks in, and it's really about noise reduction. So, you know, if you're working in low light, like this morning when we were working out in Lake McDonald, the light's actually warming up, but I wanted f11 to get everything nice and sharp in this log close up to it. And I actually photographed this in 2 frames. One focused on the mountains, one focused on the log. But just to get a little faster shutter speed, have it be a little easier to work with, especially as there's ripples in the pool, I bumped up to ISO 500, which has as low a noise output as ISO 175 or 200 in the Z9. Same thing in the Nikon Z8. You know, in the Nikon Z6 II, it's 800 ISOs where that second band starts. In your Nikon Z7 sensors, it's 400 ISO. There's different bands for each camera. You can take a look at my Milky Way course. I talk a lot about that, but that's my kind of low light blue hour ISO, is that 500 ISO. Here you can see, zooming in a little bit, I'm at 53 millimeters with the 24-120, and there were these 2 rocks a little bit further out, and this was definitely important to focus stack. So I shot one focused on the rocks, just tapped to focus and shoot, and then I tapped on the mountains on the horizon to focus and shoot on infinity. And then it was as easy as putting those 2 images together in Photoshop and just painting the sharp rocks in over the top of the blurry rocks. The exposures were identical. And painting them in the water, you'd never know the difference. I didn't even use any focus stacking algorithm. And then, as the light came up and we were approaching dawn, I went back to the scene that I really wanted to photograph with those interesting rocks. You know, just before the sun crested, I took the UV filter off of my 24-120, which throws such a nice sun star, and I got my composition. I checked the front element to make sure there was no dust or schmutz or any little things that would create, you know, havoc when you're shooting stop down directly into backlight as the sun comes up. I had a nice clean front element. And then just got ready and started playing around with focus, you know. And so I stopped down to f11. I dropped my ISO to 64, which the lower band of ISO 64, up until you hit 500, are all about maximizing dynamic range. And when the sun comes up into your scene and you're shooting straight into it, you're going to have a lot of dynamic range. So that's what we're after. We're going to shoot HDR, bracketed. 3 shots, 3 stops apart, 1 on the light meter, 1 3 stops overexposed, 1 3 stops underexposed. And I was just keying in focus at this point. So I focused on the back of the rocks and checked my horizon, and I thought, those mountains aren't very sharp. So then I tried focusing on the reflections to just kind of get a little closer to hyperfocal distance. That thing I used to like to do, zoomed into 100% in the viewfinder and stopping down and looking to see if your foreground's sharp and your background's acceptably sharp. Sadly, Nikon took that away from us. There's no way to preview your final aperture smaller than f5.6. I've done videos about that. You can click up here and I'll link a video that I did about that a while back. That's never been fixed, sadly. But, you know, by this kind of trial and error, you know, focusing a third of the way into the scene, shooting the shot, hit play, look in the viewfinder at your close foreground, make sure that all the rocks all the way to the foreground are nice and sharp, and then look all the way into the background. And then you get ready, put it in bracketing mode, and we shot our sun star when it came up. So this is a blend of 3 images captured, boom, 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 3 stops apart. One on the light meter, one 3 stops underexposed, one 3 stops overexposed. Blending those in Lightroom Classic using merge to HDR and then just processing it. You get all the tonal detail throughout the entire image in a way that you can't using graduated filters. It just yields such a fine editable result. So there's exactly the image I had envisioned the morning before when I set my camera down in front of that family and we all talked about what we were coming back working to capture. So fun stuff, really fun stuff. And then we hightailed it up. We got a little breakfast and went up the Going to the Sun highway. Actually, this was the day we loaded all of our gear, packed everybody in. A few people were driving cars as well. There was a couple of spouses along on the trip as sort of plus ones, and we had the van El Jefe loaded. We went over the Going to the Sun highway, again, scouting, middle of the day, looking for places where we might want to come back for a landscape shoot or a sunset or sunrise. Doing a little bit of macro work. Got settled in St. Mary on the sort of northeast end of the park and went up into Many Glacier where immediately we saw a bear. We shot some time lapses, which was a ton of fun, and then a bear showed up. Nice little black bear munching on berries in Many Glaciers. And you know, for anybody who's spent time in Glacier, you know that Many Glaciers is a place where you're really likely to see bears, and we saw quite a few bears in there. The next day we went into the Two Medicine Lake region, and there's this just spectacular waterfall that I love photographing. There's some of the crew with Charlie Johnson, and this waterfall just looks like it comes straight out of the mountain. It comes out of this cave essentially, and it's so flippin' fun to photograph. One of the things that I was playing around with, I was walking around working with people, and I had my 24 to 120 on, and I just wondered, you know, can I handhold this lens with its vibration reduction and with the Z9's built-in in-body image stabilization at a really slow shutter speed? This, believe it or not, is handheld at, what do we got? Almost a half a second, a little faster than a half a second, actually a little slower than a half a second. And it came out nice and sharp. I did shoot it as a very slow burst, bup, 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 and tried to hold really still. And you know, 2 of the 5 shots I took were sharp like this, which is just nuts. The technology is amazing. There's Rick kind of looking down over the crew. I love this image of Rick. Rick's my workshop coordinator, best bud. Amazing photographic instructor, and just a great guy to have in the field. And I love that this shot. It feels like Rick is channeling Indiana Jones to me. I can't. Here's Bill out there having a ton of fun. Anyhow, we had a great time. Some locals came, sat down on this rock. I took an iPhone photo for them. They turned back, and I shot my own shot with the Q2. This kid came out and started doing a little fly fishing. Fun, you know. I really like setting up and doing the more technical work or the wildlife work with my Nikon Z9, but having that little Leica Q2 on my hip for these kinds of things. And then towards the end of our time there, this cloud came over and the light just got beautiful. You know, you look at the difference between this, where the sun's half on the falls and everything's kind of brightly lit middle of the day, and this light where everything gets even. And I constantly say, you know, that time to be photographing streams and waterfalls and forests, absolutely overcast days. That evening we went back into Many Glacier, and we went to these waterfalls. There's this great canyon, and these waterfalls and cataracts go flowing through, and there was a little period where it got kind of windless, and we realized we were in the midst of a mayfly hatch. You can just, I took this image just to showcase how many mayflies are buzzing out. They don't bite or anything, but they were just so thick it was difficult to photograph. You can see David's got one on his face right there. But then a little breeze came up, the mayflies went away, and we had a really nice evening here at Many Glaciers. People were off, you know, photographing the lake. People were here photographing the falls. It was just really lovely. Really nice evening. There's Steve. Then the next day we went up, we were in the Going to the Sun Highway up at Logan Pass. Had a big adventure up there. And there's a family of mountain goats, Papa mountain goat, Mama mountain goat, twins. They were just as cute as twin baby goats could be. I did a little work with my 100 to 400, which was really the better lens for the situation, as compared to the 800, which just basically was for headshots. But they were just so cute. We had a really nice time with them. Everybody was able to spend a little time, get some good images. A little ground squirrel made an appearance in their meadow where they were working. And then up by the visitor center, there was a group of us, I think there were 9 of us total, that went on this hike on the Highline trail, which is up at Logan Pass, just this beautiful, spectacular trail up there. And right as we were parking and getting ready to go, there's a bighorn sheep just wandering in the meadow by the parking lot. And he was close enough and docile enough, I actually took this as an HDR shot with the Leica. This is a blended 3-frame HDR merger, again, on the meter, 3 stops underexposed, 3 stops overexposed, just fired bap, 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 and blended. And it gives you a feel for just how big and spectacular the mountains are in Glacier National Park. And then whipped out the 800 and did a few portraits. You can see I kind of chose this cirque back here, this glacially carved cirque, and it got a little bit lit and the light was nice, and then he stuck his tongue out at me, but you know, a fun time. Here's a shot of David Archer and Bill photographing him, just how close he was to the parking lot. It's nutty. And then we took off on the Highline Trail, and we had quite an adventure here. I'll do another video about this in the next weeks, where, you know, we hiked this trail and we wound up having this really interesting encounter with these bighorn sheep that were coming down the mountain. And then we realized that they were, you know, they were checking us out, but they were also looking at something that worried them down the valley. And as we started looking down, we realized they had something to be concerned about. And then it became clear he was climbing up towards where our trail goes back to the car. And we wound up having to kind of navigate getting around this bear and getting back to the car. So it was an interesting little situation, and we learned a bit about the use of pepper spray. I'll tell that story in a separate video with my good friend Charlie Johnson that I filmed while we were out here. I just have to put it together, but it was exciting. It was fun. We all played it really safe, did some smart things, did some not so smart things, and learned a few lessons along the way. So I'll share that one. But suffice it to say that the entire crew made it through the experience and feel like we have just one more fun story to tell. Here's a photo of the last active glacier in Glacier National Park. Sadly, it's dwindled to not a whole lot of glacier left. You can see where it's receded back off the rock it's been carving. We also had a really nice morning at Goose Island up above St. Mary Lake. It was just a lovely, lovely dawn. The whole crew got together. I was actually helping people with the van and getting some people organized up higher, and then a few people hiked down to where there's a really nice kind of panoramic vista of the mountains. Rick was helping people. I got down there a little late, and I was really grateful that I had the tall fluid head tripod, because the only real place for me to be able to set up, and you know, I was helping other people, but all that was really left for the shot that I'd like to do involved me setting up over the top of everyone to be able to capture this panorama, which really was lovely. You know, I was working on a wide angle scene, but the sky, the clouds were all down low. My favorite cloud was actually this bit of cloud right here, and I shot a bit of time lapse of this area, a bit of time lapse of this, but at this first nice light, there just weren't any upper clouds. And I just felt like the tighter shot, so I zoomed into 42 millimeters and shot it as a panorama versus doing a real wide angle shot and just cropping all the sky out. This way, you know, I just love the resolution and detail that putting together a panorama gets you. So I shot this as a vertical series of 42 millimeter shots and made sure I overlapped, got more than I felt like I needed, and I love the printability and the enlargeability that shooting things as a panorama gets you. It's just phenomenal. So one of the other really fun things that happened while we were in Glacier was we had some just wonderful wildlife experiences. And one of the things was David Archer noticed that there were these tree swallows nesting in this little burnt tree. And I think if you see our whole group out photographing, you'll see just how far away and how small this tree is. You know, I was working here with my good friend JD's new 600 f4 teleconverter lens, the new 600 f4 TC S lens, which is magnificent, as is David Archer's 400. We had all three of the big lenses with us, my 800, David Archer's 400 TC, and JD's 600 TC. And these birds are just too fast to photograph if you don't have a camera, and like we have now with the Z9 or the Z8 with their incredible autofocus ability. And we were using pre-release capture. These birds are so fast. When you see them move around their nest and flying around, even when you know where the nest is, and they have fledglings that they're working on teaching to fly and teaching to feed in the air, they're so fast, they're just almost impossible to capture. It's, you know, David Archer, who's just such a magnificent wildlife photographer, has been working to photograph swallows just because they're such a challenge. Well, we used the pre-release burst, kind of pre-focused on the nest and got some images, but then we started thinking about the new Autocapture. And I'm gonna do a whole video about how we set up the Autocapture to capture these series of these tree swallows feeding their young. And we also shot some slow-mo just of how they fly and move through the air using the Autocapture, because you can do video Autocapture as well. So we were out there with the Z9s, playing around with Autocapture, playing with some of the settings. I have a video with David coming soon about how we set that up. And really, Autocapture is the only way that we were getting these images of these incredibly fast, acrobatic, tiny birds. You know, one of the funny things that I just have to add is that, you know, we were out there and people kept slowing down in cars. What do you guys see? We got all these big lenses. And you know, is it a bear? Where's the bear? And we're photographing little tiny tree swallows. People are like, seriously? And they'd stop, get out, not believe us. And David, you know, as we're going down the line, David's just constantly, tiny birds, tree swallows. People are, oh.
Small bird. Tree swallows.
All right, and then the last night that we were in Glacier, we took a drive back into to Many Glacier before we all went to dinner together, and went looking for bears, and we had such a cool experience. We had the biggest black bear that I've seen in a really long time, moving through these wildflower meadows. To one side of us, as a huge grizzly bear was out moving along on the other side of the road, and literally this park ranger was with us, and we all had bear spray. He had bear spray. He had a shotgun pointed up in the sky just to make noise, and totally kept us safe while we photographed these two bears. We didn't get a big glimpse of this grizzly, but I love the fact that we got to see him at all. He seemed like a big, old, rough and tumble grizzly with the radio collar, but this black bear really posed for us and moved through the scene, and it was just a really great way to wrap a wonderful workshop in a spectacular place. All right, so I think you get the impression we had a really fantastic time on this workshop. It was just as great as I thought it was going to be. We're going to be running that workshop again in 2024, so look for info on that. Again, the Mazatlan workshop for the total eclipse is up. You can read more about that. Just go over to the website, hudsonhenry.com/workshops. We also have office hours. Again, on this Tuesday, August 1st, 10 a.m. Pacific. Join up with us. We'll talk all things photographic. Leave us a question when you sign up over at hudsonhenry.com/office hours. I just want to thank everyone who's been sharing, liking, and hitting subscribe to this channel. It makes such a huge difference. You know, it's this community of people watching and sharing questions with me, either via, you know, the YouTube comments or straight to me via my email, or out there on workshops with me that really drives the content here. And upcoming episodes, we're going to be talking a lot about the Z9's Autocapture. I'm going to share some cool new methods for saving your settings in Nikon using an app on your phone and even manipulating them. That's coming up really soon. Some really cool stuff ahead. So thanks everybody. I so appreciate it. I also appreciate everyone who uses my links and shops through my store. You can always run over to hudsonhenry.com/ATS links or click right here. And also over on the website while you're there, you'll find links to all my custom tripods and the case, the new Revolution filter sets, and the amazing Naya Evo backpacks, just those kind of things that I use, love, stand by. I'm really proud to offer those in my store as well. And it helps me out when you shop with me. So I appreciate it. Thanks everyone. All right. So I hope everyone out there enjoyed the trip through Glacier. I hope you're staying safe, you're staying creative, and we'll see you next week.